Thank Hashem. That's we're able to learn every day. Amen. And because of our learning, we should have the basic English immediately. We're going to start Pei Dalet Amud Beis by Gufa. And Gufa is a re-examining of a statement that was made by Amoraim. It says over here, you see where it is? It's 15 lines from the bottom. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav. Rav was the teacher of Rav Yehuda, his first teacher. It says Lehozru Ksheris Leinasi Lepsulim. This basically means that a kayan that's a chalal can marry a bas kayan. A chalala cannot marry a kayan. A halala is a woman that had relations with someone that was forbidden to, that she was forbidden to. Not just a zaina, but because of kahuna. Let's say she was a widow, had relations with a kayan gadol. She becomes a halala. So she can't marry a regular kayan. So what about a chalal that's an offspring? He's a child of a forbidden kahuna relations. Like, let's say his father's a kayan that married a gerusha and had him. So he's a chalal. Is he allowed to marry a bas kayan? So Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav says, of course. The ksherais, which that's the female kayan, is not prohibited to marry a pasal, a chalal. Lema Messiah, I'll prove it to you. I have a proof from our Mishnah. It says chalal shenasa ksheira. In the case of the Mishnah, remember the Mishnah had 4 cases where the woman is permitted to her husband, but she's forbidden to the yavam. She's permitted to the yavam, but she's forbidden to her husband. She's forbidden to both, or she's permissible to both. That was the 4 cases. So in the case where she's permissible to her husband, you know what the case was? It was a chalal that married a bas kayan. Then, why is she forbidden to the yavam? Because her brother-in-law that she's about to marry, the yavam, he was not a chalal, and she becomes a chalal through that marriage. So she's permissible to her husband. Now again, the husband's a chalal, and she's a bas kayan. The Gemara says, "My love kayanis." When it says ksheira, what does it mean ksheira? That she's kosher. It must mean she's a kayanis. Haru'ilai, that's fit to marry her, fit to marry him. Now, that is an interesting comment, because where do we even get that when it says the word ksheira, that means that she is a bas kayan? Just means a regular girl. The same halacha would apply. A chalal marries a Jewish girl. Another kayan can never marry her because she becomes a halala through that, even though there was no sin. But she lived with a chalal. She becomes a. But who says she's a bas kayan? So Rashi says, well, when it says ksheira, that means that she's permissible. That means that a good marriage is a kayan with a bas kayan. It says that in other places, that a bas kayan should marry a kayan, or a kayan should marry a bas kayan. It says, okay, so that's what it means ksheira. It's like an assumption here. So it's almost like a agadic interpretation of a halacha. Because that's not a dry halacha. I don't think that has to be. That just says that that's a good marriage. My ksheira lekahuna. It means that she's kosher to marry the kayan. Umar says, lie. That's not the case. Yisraelis. She's a regular Yisrael. We have no proof from that Mishnah that a chalal can marry a bas kayan. It's a regular Yisraelis. My kshera. So then what does it mean kshera? That she's kosher. What is she kosher for? Well, she's kshera lakal. She could marry anyone. It means she's not a giyaris or Bulgaris is kshera lakal also. She's not a mamzeres or something. A kosher girl. So zihachi, if that's the case, yesh ach kosher nami kosher lakal. Then the symmetry in this Mishnah doesn't fit because we're talking about a chalal that has a kosher brother, and the woman is kshera. If kosher means that permissible to get married into the congregation, then the brother that's kosher sounds like he's kshera lakal. Mechlal dehu pasel lakal. That would mean that the brother that's the chalal, the first husband, is pasel lakal. Just to add up here, like the terms that are being used, defining the terms, we want to keep it symmetrical. It's not going to fit to say, you told me he's a chalal, now you're telling me he's pasal lakal. Elalav kayan. We have to say that the brother is a kayan. Umidahu kayan he kayanes. And then the woman is a kayanes. And that's how it would fit well. Gemara says, midi area. Is this like the way you have to grab it, the way you have to say it? Hakadisa v'akadisa. You don't have to say that. I have two brothers. One's a chalal, one's a kosher. And I have a woman that's kshera. She doesn't have to be a kahanis. She could be Yisraelis. Okay. So we don't have a proof from our Mishnah, but we still have the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Marav that a kahanis is allowed to marry a chalal. Masiv Rabban Bar Nachman. He quotes the pasuk that says, Isha Zaina v'chalala la yikachu, Isha grusha miisha la yikachu. It says twice la yikachu. Zaina and chalala, a kayan should not marry, and a divorcee, a kayan should not marry. It says la yikachu twice. Malamed, that la yikachu, that teaches she'isha muzheres al yidei yoish, that the woman is warned through the man. Al yidei means like because of, probably because of the man. In other words, just like a kohen should not marry a zaina or chalala or a grusha, the assumption now is that a kohenes should also not marry a chalala, a chalal. A kohenes should not marry a chalal. Amar Rava says, no, that's not what this means. It says leikachu twice to tell me that there's a prohibition on the woman. That doesn't mean that the woman is not allowed to marry a chalal. What that really means is that kol heichadehu mazar he mazares, kol heichadehu loy mazar he loy mizdara. If he's not allowed to marry her, then she has the same prohibition. She should not be marrying him. But if he is allowed to marry her, then she's allowed to marry him. We're not creating, because of the leikachu, a new prohibition. We're just saying that when a prohibition is being performed, being violated, it's not only on the man, it's also on the woman. That's what we're saying. Yeah, so we didn't create anything new here. A kohen is not allowed to marry a chalala. A chalala, a kohen is not allowed to marry a chalala. But a bas kohen is allowed to marry a chalal. We didn't create any new... anything new here? Yeah. Yosef, they just cloned you. Okay. Now it says, is this where you know this from? You know this from this pasuk that a woman has the same prohibition as the man if it's a kohen. It says, this is a gemara that we had in several places. You see, a lot of times in the Torah, the verses are said in the masculine. So maybe you would think that it's the prohibitions of the Torah only apply to women, to men, not to women. But the truth is that that's the way the Torah speaks, is that if it's speaking to two to two genders, so it uses the masculine. I think that's how it works in the grammar. So, but we do have a source that says ish ay isha, ki yasim mikol chatas adam, a man or a woman, and the Gemara tells us, this is the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, that it's coming to tell us that the whole Torah applies to women as well. Okay, so if the whole Torah applies to women as well, so if a Kohen is not allowed to marry a Chalala, so is the Chalala have a prohibition on this as well? The answer is yes, because that's a violation. So it's her violation as well. The Torah, I mean, it's clear in the Torah that this is not a acceptable union. So I don't need La Yikachu twice from Rabbi Yehuda Marav to teach me that. No, not Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Who said this? La Yikachu twice. Ravin Bar Nachman quoted. Sheisha musheres al yidei ha'ish. I have it from Tana de Rabbi Shmuel that every prohibition in the Torah applies to women, just like it applied to the men. Well, the Gemara says that's not so perfect because imihahi, if you would just use that Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, havamina lav hashava bakol, avlav sheina shava bakoloi. It's not a perfect limud, because when it says hishva kasav isha leish, that it's always the same, the men and the women, when it comes to prohibitions in the Torah. It's not referring to the mitzvah seshas man gram, it's referring to negative prohibitions. All negative prohibitions apply to all the women. So I would have thought that it's only negative prohibitions that are universal. But if it comes to a prohibition that's only applicable to one sort of person, like a Kohen, I could have thought that maybe it doesn't apply to the women. You see, it's not a universal prohibition. It only applies to the men. So therefore, I have to say, La Yikachu, to tell me that it applies to the women as well. The Gemara says, that's not true. Because we're on top of Pehei. We're saying is that even prohibitions that are not universal, we would have assumed that they apply to women as well, because when it comes to becoming impure, who's obligated not? Who is warned not to become impure? The Kohen. And the time of the Kasav Rachmana b'nei Aaron, the Torah had to clearly state that it only applies to the men, not to the women. Women are allowed to go to funerals even if the last name is Cohen and their family is Kohanim. The women can go to the funeral. Why? Because it clearly states so in the Torah. It says b'nei Aaron, b'nei b'nei Aaron. It's only referring to the sons of Aaron, not to the daughters. Halavachi. But if not for that special exclusion of b'nei Aaron, which the Torah doesn't tell me, I would have thought hava mina chayavis my timer lav misham de Rav Yehuda Marav.
The thing is, in those situations, it says b'nei Aaron, but many times in, I guess, in most languages, the female is also included in the male. So, especially in Hebrew, especially.
Right. Here it's not. I hear. I think the answer to that is that it didn't need to say b'nei Aaron at all. I mean, the whole children. Yeah, I know, but the whole term is extra because it says Emar Lakayanim, and that could have been enough. The fact that it says b'nei Aaron was teaching me what? So it's coming to say, if it wanted to tell me, I mean, Kohanim has already all of that.
Oh.
And Kohanim would have excluded the Chalalim. So why did it say b'nei Aaron? It must be that it's coming to exclude the daughters. Yeah, I think that's the pshat. Or something like that. But I hear what you're saying. If it didn't say Kohanim, it didn't say anything, it would have said b'nei Aaron, then I probably wouldn't have had this. I was well, b'nei Aaron, okay.
All right.
Yeah, b'nei is not specifically like b'nei Yisrael doesn't mean not the women.
Right.
But b'nei Aaron. But because the whole expression was extra, we think that it's coming to teach me that it's not. Now here, why did it need to tell that to me? It didn't need to tell me that b'nei Aaron v'lei b'nei Aaron, if the women are anyways not included, because this was a prohibition that only applies to a small group of the Jewish people. It must be that even prohibitions that don't apply to everyone also apply to the women. And that's why I needed a special exclusion to exclude the women. The Gemara says, why do I need Bnei Aaron? Not because that everything in the Torah applies to women as well. I have a special limud that it would have applied to the women because I have the Lo Yikachu, which says that the Cohen prohibitions not only apply to the men, but also apply to the women. So I had to exclude them from the Tumah, which is a Cohen prohibition. Yeah. What was the question and what's the answer? Question is, we have two sources to include women in prohibitions in the Torah. One of them is a general rule. It says Isha Yisha, and that's a Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, which the Gemara here quotes from Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, that Isha Yisha, all the women have the same rule as the men. So what do I need La Yikachu for? La Yikachu is the second, it says it twice, that teaches me that the women are the same as the men when it comes to marriages, forbidden marriages between Kohanim. And so we say that, well, I wouldn't have known that it applies to the laws of Kohanim as well, so I have to have that. It says, what do you mean? Of course you knew that it applies, because you needed a special verse to exclude the women from the laws of Tumah. So of course you knew. It says no. It's only after I have the Lo Yikachu that I needed that verse. But from the Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Isha Yisha, Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, that I wouldn't have known this. Okay. Ikad Amri, those that say Kicha et Strichale, that we actually need the Lo Yikachu because Sal Kadai Tchamina Ligmar Mitama Kamashlan. We reverse the whole story here. We say, I could have thought by Tumah, notice that it doesn't apply to the women. So maybe if a Kohen marries a Chalala or a divorcee, I would say that it's just a prohibition on the Kohen. The woman is fine. She doesn't have any prohibition in this. It's his problem. Even though she's an equal partner in this. But nevertheless, it's his sin, not her sin. So I could have thought that. Why would I have thought that? Because by Tumah, it only applies to the men. It doesn't apply to the women. So therefore, we have to say La Yikachu. Therefore, we have to say La Yikachu to tell me it's not the same as Tumah. Yeah, we're asking why we need two sources to include women in prohibitions, and the answer is because I could have had a reason why not. That's the
Eating truma, is that?
no, Tumah, which means going to a cemetery, which is only applies to male Kohanim, that prohibition. Okay, Rav Papa, Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua, those are friends. They're students of Rav and Abaya. It's probably a fifth generation Amira. So Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua, Iklo lehintzavu, l'shachnetzavu, which is liasrei de Rabidi Baravin. I have two versions here. They come to the area of Rabidi Baravin, Bo Minayu. They asked of them, and they see the two rabbis show up, they asked them a question. Huzaruk sheris linasi lipsulen oilai. That basically means are women that are kayanim, kayhanais, daughters of kayanim, are they allowed to marry forbidden a chalal? No, these both. No, Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder, Rav Yeshua. Let me try to remember if I know where Rav Papa lived. Yeah, they came to that area. They came to that area of Ravidi Baravin, and the people over there asked him this question. It may be that there was nothing interesting. They lived in Pumbedisa. That's where the yeshiva was, and they came to Shachnetzev or Hintzevu. Yeah, Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua was right next to him. Yeah, on the left. And Rav Idi Baravin. We have Rav Chia Baravin. And maybe it's like the brother of Rav Chia Baravin. I'm not sure. You want to say Rav Yidi Baravin lived in Eretz Yisrael? No. There was a Rav Yosi Baravin in Eretz Yisrael.
I don't want to say anything.
Naftali. Oh, well, there's going to be a conversation that's they're gonna answer back. And okay, so they asked him this question: are Kohanais allowed to marry a challah?
Disqualified.
A disqualified Kohen.
Halal.
Amalur of Papa Tanisua. Papa says we have a Mishnah. It says a sorry yuchsin alam bavel. Maybe it's Bryce. 10 types of lineages came up from Bavel. Who are the 10? Let's go through this. Kayanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Chalalim, Geirim, Charurim, freed slaves, right? Mamzerim is 7. Nesinim is 8. Shtuki, those are people that they don't know who the father is. And Asufi are someone that was just found, like a baby was found. We don't know his lineage at all. You know, like in the train station or something. You know, that's 10. Okay, and then it goes on to explain what the halachas are with these. So it says, well, Kainim Leviim Yisraelim Mutam Lavi Zebazeh. A Kohen can marry a Levi can marry Yisrael, Yisrael can marry a Kohen. It's all mutter. Leviim Yisraelim Chalalim Geirim Charurim. All of those, which excludes just the Kohanim, Mutarim Lavi Zebazeh. A Levi can marry a ger and a freed slave, and a Yisrael the same, no problem. Geirei Charurei and Mamzerei Nesini Shtuki Vasufi. Then when it comes to the people that have a problem with the lineage, either Mamzerim or Nesinim, they come from those converts that we can't accept, or we don't know who the father is, or we don't know who the parents are. They can also marry Geirim. They can, that the marriage is allowed. It's only they were prohibited to come into the congregation, and the Geirim were allowed to marry them. They're allowed to marry the Geirim. Well, the interesting thing here is that when it says that a chalal, if you notice the second case, it says Leviim Yisraelim, Chalalim, Geirim, Charurim, Mutarim Lavi Zebazeh. A chalal can marry a Levi. A chalal can marry Yisrael. What about a Kohanais? A Kohen, a Kohen's daughter, a Kohanes. Is she allowed to marry a chalal? V'ila Kohanes, the chalal like Tani, it doesn't say yes. Probably it means no. It's a kasha on, well, it's a kasha on Rav Huna, not on Rav Huna, it's a kasha on, who said this before? Rav Yehuda Marav, Leihozru Ksheres and Asapsum. Rav Huna Marav said that it was permissible. But Rav Papa here is saying, he's answering the question that it's prohibited. They asked the question, Rav Papa answers it's prohibited. You're trying to say that it lists every possible marriage, every possible combination. Kayen, it doesn't work. It doesn't list things that only work one way. When we say mutarim lavei zeh bazeh, they can marry each other. That means that we would like it to work. That if it's a man, it can marry the woman, and if it's a woman, it can marry the man. But over here, a chalal can marry a bas kayan. But
someone's just
a disqualified Kohen, right?
Yeah.
But a Kohen cannot marry a halala. So because it only works one way, so we didn't put it into this category where the conclusion goes can marry each other, because they can't marry each other.
Do we just assume nowadays that most Kohanim are halalim?
Are not halala. If
Really?
this person's a Kohen, he's a Kohen, yeah.
After thousands of years?
Yeah.
Like, wow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it only goes one way, but you'd think there'd be a population decrease over time. Kohanim.
Well, every once in a while, there's a Kohen, there's a family named Kohen, and they're not Kohanim. And that could be either because they're halalim or they found someone's passport and they were escaping the country, and
That's true.
they just took the passport. That was common. Someone passed away and
Well, same
wasn't
the other
recorded,
way.
they would
Yeah.
use those passports.
But we have Kohanim that
Also-
changed their names because it's too Jewish a name. So
Oh,
they wanted. I have a cousin, his name was Cohen. He changed it to Carter because he was in the army.
oh,
And as a Cohen, he would never get promoted.
wow. Should have changed it to Smith.
Same with the other way around. I guess you
Or
can have
Rashid.
someone with the last name Cohen who's also not a Cohen.
Someone with the last name Cohen, that's not a Cohen. Yeah, so that's what we're saying, that
Oh.
it is possible
Mhm.
that either because maybe they're halalim
Yeah,
or maybe they just took the last name from,
right.
from crossing borders and things and whatever. Okay. Well, Rav Papa said the answer to this question is no, and he has a proof. Rav Huna Bar Yeshua says you don't have a proof because since it only works one way, so that's why this Mishnah didn't say it. Also, Lakami de Ravidi Baravin, apparently the sage over there was Ravidi Baravin. Amalahu, Dardaki, children. Hachi Amar Rav Yehuda Marav. This is what Rav Yehuda Marav says. It's absolutely permissible. Ksheris are allowed, means a regular kohenes is kohenes is allowed to marry a chalal, which means Rav Huna Bar Yeshua was correct. Okay.
But can she eat truma?
No, once she's married, she can't eat truma because he's not allowed to eat truma.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the whole one today.
Yeah, I think so. On the last page, the little olive from on the Damar Avi Damarav Lehuzur Ksheres Nasib Sun, you have a little olive there. It sends you to the Rambam. Which usually that means that's the halacha. Do you see a line that starts Damar Avi Damarav, like in the center of the page? So then it says Loi Huzuru by the Loi. There's a little olive. That olive sends you to the Ein Mishpat, which tells you Maiminis Perik Yutes Milchus Yisirabia. That's the Rambam. So when you have a little aleph, those little letters on something, it usually means that's the halacha. Yeah, you can't rely on that because you have to look it up, but that's usually the way they did it. Yeah, but then when it goes on, then it quotes the Smag and the Tur, Shulchan Aruch, and he quotes you where it is. So in there, that's the reference to.
That's a hint.
Yeah, that's a hint. Yeah. Who was that? That was Rabbi Yeshua Boaz, I think his name was. I think he used the Ein Mishpat. Am I correct? Ein Mishpat, Ner Mitzvah Torah. All of these, the Maseres Shas, Ein Mishpat, Ner Mitzvah Torah is all made by Rabbi Yeshua Boaz.
So it's not just a reference.
Well, it's a reference, but where they put it sort of alludes to one more aspect of that's the one that's going to be quoted and not the opposing opinion. Yeah. Okay. Shnias midivrei seifrim. I like that phrase over there. You call it. It says dardaki. They said in Toronto they had a big Erev machlekes many years ago. Like whenever there's an Erev, there's usually some conflict of some sort. The rabbis, they agree, they don't agree. So there was an old Rav there, Rabbi Price. It was an old Rav, came from Europe. It's a student probably of, I think, Reb Tzadok HaKayin or something. It was like, anyway, the new group of rabbis came in, they made a kailal and this, and they thought there was a Shaila Erev, so they went to talk to him. So he was 90 something, and Reish Kailal, Rabbi Miller, was probably 60 or something. So he knocks on his door. He says, I want to talk to you about the Erev. So he says, babies. They send me babies. I'm not.
It's all right.
Did he answer the question?
What I was told is that they wrote to Eretz Yisrael And the response that they got is that when we have Shilas and Erevin, we ask someone in Toronto by the name of Rabbi Price. But in Erevin, there's many, many levels. So it's like a whole, like a scale. It could be kosher according to one opinion, but not another, So,
Hmm.
so
Is there a Masechton and
on Erevin, yeah.
oh there.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Okay, Shnius Midivrei Seifim, one of the things we said in the Mishnah was Shnius, this means secondary prohibitions, which means that it's rabbinic. Rabbinic prohibited relatives. Like not the mother, but the mother's mother is a prohibited relative because of rabbinic law. So the rule over here was that if someone was married to this forbidden relative, so we had a whole interesting thing that, and then the person passed away, and then she marries the Yavam, or the opposite. The Yavam was the forbidden relative. So we said she doesn't get a ksuba when she gets divorced, or when he passes away. She doesn't get the ksuba. She doesn't get payment for the fruits. That she doesn't get food. She doesn't take out the clothing that she brought in. However, the child is kosher, and they force them to get divorced. On the other hand, we said if an almana marries a kohen gadol or a kohen for prohibition, which is a biblical prohibition, there is a ksuba.
But the Kohen would be a halala.
The woman becomes a halala. Yeah.
And the Kohen.
And the
guy,
Kohen,
'cause he's marrying
it's
a,
interesting. It's
Yevamos.
the child would be a halal. The Kohen himself, let's say he steps out of that marriage, is perfectly fine. So he doesn't become permanently disqualified.
Just temporarily.
Just temporarily while he's married. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So the question goes like this: the people of Biri asked Rav Sheshes, Shniya labal, Shniya liyavam. Let's say the husband was a relative that was prohibited to marry this woman. However, the husband passed away, and now she marries the husband's brother. Okay. Well, the husband's brother she wasn't related to. Yesh la ksuba miyavam malai. Will she get a ksuba if they get divorced from the yavam? What's the shaila? Of course they should. Well, it's not so simple. Kiven da mamar ksuba sal nechse ba'ila rishon lesla. Aydilma kiven dilo lesla mirishan tikina le'rabban risheni isla. The basic rule when it came to yibam was that her ksuba comes from the first husband's estate.
Wow.
Since the first husband did not have to give her a ksuba because they weren't even allowed to be married, sort of like a way of encouraging them to get separated. No, maybe not. She committed a sin. She doesn't get a ksuba. Let's put it like that. She doesn't get a ksuba. So she doesn't get a ksuba from the first husband. So now when she's married to the second husband, who was supposed to give her the ksuba in the next marriage? The first husband.
Right.
So she doesn't get a ksuba. Or there's one other rule, and that is that if the first husband doesn't have any money left in the estate, then the second husband is supposed to give her a ksuba. So here too, the first husband doesn't give her a ksuba because it's as if there's no money left in the estate. Well, she doesn't owe it to her. But the second husband, so therefore the second husband should give her the ksuba. Is that how we view it or not? That's the.
So Yevamos gets the ksuba from the first husband?
Yeah.
Unless there's no money.
Unless there's no money, then it goes to the second one. Now here, the first husband never owed her. So it's a good question.
Good question.
Amalu Rav Sheshes says Tanisua. We have a source, a brisa, or a mishnah. Ksubasa al nichzi ba'ila rishon. M'haisa shniya labal. Afilu miyavam ein la. The ksuba comes from the first husband. However, if she was related to the first husband, then she doesn't get from the second husband either.
Oh,
Okay, that's the answer.
completely on her own.
The Gemara says, Michlal, dikadisla miyavam. Why did you say that if she was related to the first husband, then she doesn't get even from the second husband. It sounds like if she's not related, then she does get from the second husband. We're missing a little clause here. It goes like this. We add in that clause that if the first husband did not have any money left in the estate, then she gets from the yavam, but if she was related to the first husband, then she doesn't get from the yavam either. Okay, we have an answer. Well, it's not really not his problem. It was just what they needed to do was resolve another issue. We don't want to ever have a case where there's a woman that's in a marriage that would be very easy for the husband to divorce her. So when he looks at the bank account of the estate, the first husband, he sees that it's down to zero. So he says, okay, you're out, and it's free. There's no, meanwhile, there's no responsibility on him and there's no money coming. So we didn't want that. The woman should be just.
He doesn't get the new responsibility of his marriage to her. I'm saying, why does the first marriage become the second person's problem? He's just doing the mitzvah of evil.
He did the mitzvah of Yivam.
Right.
But he also gets the inheritance from the deceased brother. So that inheritance is going to pay for the ksuba. Now, when that goes all the way down, so he just divorces her. There we have a woman that has no strength to stay in that marriage.
So he gets 100% of the inheritance, even if there are other brothers.
Yeah, I think so. I think is that what we learned? I think that's what we learned. He gets the whole inheritance. Yeah. Had a whole discussion if he was the firstborn. Yeah, if he was the firstborn, if he gets the double, and because the brother now took over, we said no. I think only that. Okay. Boimine Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Eliezer asked from Rabbi Yochanan. Almana lekain gadol. Rusha v'chalitz lekain heda yesh lemazaynas yein lemazaynas. We said that in a prohibited marriage, if it's a rabbinic prohibition, we said that she doesn't get ksuba and she doesn't get the fruits. We said that she doesn't get she doesn't get food either. He doesn't pay for her food. They're supposed to get divorced. So why is he responsible now to support her? So, however, when it came to Almana L'Kain Gadol, it says she gets a ksuba if they get divorced, which is very interesting. But whatever the case is, it left out an important detail. Does he support her while they're together? Or if he dies, can she eat until she gets remarried, can she eat food from the estate? It's an important question. Hey Chidami, what's the story? Ilema the Asfa to say, if they're living in the house together, now you want to say that he's obligated to support her. He's supposed to be divorcing her. Now we say that she can claim that she needs support, she can't do that. Sometimes there's illegal activity, and then there's a conflict between two people that are involved, how to split the illegally earned money. They can't go to court. Going to get in big trouble. They have to somehow resolve it outside of court. So here, they're not supposed to be together. She has a claim that she wants food, but how she can't make a claim. She get divorced. They need to get divorced. Okay, so well, they're separated. He's in another country, and she goes and borrows against, in his name, that when the husband comes back, he's going to pay for it and she's going to get food. So there's no real prohibition there other than because they're not living together. It sounds funny though. It sounds like there's still a prohibition. They should have been divorced. Okay, so the Gemara says, do we view it like this? One of the conditions in the ksuba is that he's going to support her. Right. So since she does get a ksuba at the time of the divorce, so therefore the condition of the ksuba also, which is that he's going to support her, also exists. Maybe we institute a ksuba because she takes it and goes. But here, the food, she's going to hang around in the house. There's breakfast every morning. She's going to hang around, and we didn't institute the everyday food. We just gave her the ksuba. Amalei Lesla. So Rabbi Yochanan says she does not get food. Tanya Yeshla. 1 second. The Brisa says that she does get food. It says Kitanya Hilachar Misa. That's if he dies, she can eat off the estate. Istamar Amalei Tanya Yeshla. Some read it a little differently. Some said that the Rabbi Yochanan quotes a Brisa that she gets the food. So how could she get food? She's supposed to be getting divorced. It says no. When it says that she gets the food, that's after he passed away. The same answer. Just the question is what Rabbi Yochanan said and what he asked. Taner Rabbanan. I think I should leave this here. There's one sugya that takes us down to the Mishnah. Let me leave it. Let's stop at the Taner Rabbanan. And any update on Shabbos? Are we going to learn tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? Yeah.
I don't know. See what the rain looks like. The rain when there's a tropical storm
Oh,
tomorrow.
oh, how exciting.
What happens in a tropical storm? I don't remember.
It's just very windy, very, very windy.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it'll be raining. It's bands of rain.
Just hearing about it today. Like I didn't
Okay. So I'm not sure what we should do. Let's
Maybe just do more on Sunday, Monday.
maybe just do Shavuos.
I need to get some
Tonight.
Just do.
But whatever you decide, let me know.
Okay, I'll post it on the thing. What I'm thinking is, I think in the morning it's going to be easier than the nighttime. I think it's going to be easier to learn in the morning if it's raining than if it's raining Shavuos night. That may be more complicated. So I'd rather do the 9 o'clocks because people are going to come to shul anyway. They'll schlep to shul for Kriyas HaTorah, so they'll come at 9. No, does that make more sense in the rain? I think people go out in the rain in the day rather than.
Does Rabbi give his shir usually before the 10 o'clock?
Oh
Is it
yeah.
Siddur
No,
shir?
not on Yom Tov.
But on Shabbos?
Oh, that's
before
right,
Yom
on
Tov?
Shabbos. I can't
You
come.
might not.
Okay, so we won't learn.
No.
I'll post it. I have to ask Ellie if the rabbi's giving a share. I don't want to have that conflict. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Have a good Shabbos.
Check the chat. Yeah, most of the time. That's right.
Very few people come to that